the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
The issues that matter most, right here. The Drew Mariani Show
on Relevant Radio.
When does time move more quickly? When you're relaxing on the couch or sprinting on the treadmill? Well, I think the same is true with respect to cognitive resources, meaning the fewer cognitive resources are applied to processing less information, the faster time seems to progress. In this way, a night's sleep can seem to pass in a few moments of unconsciousness, and those who fall into a coma are often shocked to learn that months or years have passed. Level of cognitive processing is inversely correlated with the subjective passage of time.
It's the Drew Mariani Show on Relevant Radio.
Time, it's a mystery. That was Dr. Orion Taraban. He's was from Psych Hacks on why time seems to move slowly sometimes and faster other times. Have you noticed it? You've seen it fly by? There's something profound about the concept of time. It's one of those mysteries that has puzzled philosophers and scientists and theologians for centuries. And we have this invisible, unstoppable force that governs our lives, right? We don't really understand it. Have you ever paused to ponder what time is? I mean, it's constantly moving forward. It's never stopping. It's never reversing, right? We live our lives in the flow of it from the moment you're born into your final breath. But what is it? Is it just the ticking of a clock, the turning of pages on a calendar? Is it something deeper, something more elusive? I mean, time, of course, gives us structure, right? It separates moments so that you can experience life in a sequence. And it helps us to make, I think, sense in the world. But science tells us it's also a dimension, right? Much like the dimensions of space. In the realm of physics, time is woven into the very fabric of the universe, forming what we know as space-time. Yet despite, our advanced understanding of the universe, time continues to baffle us. We measure it with incredible precision, yet we can't fully grasp the essence of it. So from a philosophical perspective, I think it raises a lot of questions. Is time real? Is it a construct of the human mind? Right? There's a theological aspect to all of this. Time is often seen as a creation of God, a means by which he orders a universe. If you go to Ecclesiastes 3:1, there's a great verse. It says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under the sun. This divine perspective, I think, adds another layer to our understanding. And I want to talk about it. Monsignor Charles Pope wrote a great piece on time. Something to meditate on, something to contemplate, something to thank God for. But again, this is a mystery. We live in a world where time dictates our every move. Yet you can't control it, You can plan your days, you can set your schedules, you can mark your milestones, but you can't slow it down, right? You can't speed it up. You can't create more of it. You can't revisit the past. You can't leap into the future. And it's deeply personal. And the moments that you cherish, you hold dear, they're all based in time. Let's dive into it today. Let's take a look at it. Some also say, and maybe we could talk about this as well, is time accelerating? Is time being shortened, by God? Maybe we're living in a special time. A lot to get into. I'm joined right now by Monsignor Charles Pope, and he's been reflecting on this, at the beginning of the new year, and it's great to have him with us. He's the pastor of Holy Comforter St. Cyprian Parish Community in Washington, D.C. It's a wonderful parish there. You can learn more about him at msgrpope.com, monsignorpope.com. Welcome back, Monsignor. Good to have you with us.
Well, it's good to be here, yeah.
Thanks for writing this. I tell you every time I talk to you how much I appreciate your writing. You always make me think about something, and that is the whole concept of time. It's an amazing mystery. It really is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it as a creation of God, of course, but you can't grasp it. It's kind of hard to understand. Walk us through it if you could.
Yeah, I wrote the post on New Year's Eve, and I was saying, that evening, a lot of people stay up and something mysterious happens. Some imaginary line goes over the top of our head, and we go from 2024 to 2025. Yep. And it's like, and we don't see it, but we just know that something's happened. And it's really no more or less mysterious than, the passage of, 11:43 to 11:44. But it has great significance for us. So I think, and as you were already saying, there's a difficulty in defining time. We all know what it is. Remember how St. Augustine spoke of the Trinity. He said, if you ask me, I don't know. If you don't ask me, I know. So it's one of those, how do you define time? Some people say it's a measure of change. It says, well, that's lovely, but it's too theoretical, and so on. And some would say it's just another way of measuring distance, but they're certainly related. But again, we've got all kinds of ways we think we can define it, but it's hard. So we all know what it is, but we don't know quite exactly what it is. And so, at any rate, but all that's a way of saying that I think that, as we ponder time, maybe some of the ways of illustrating its mystery would be, I list a couple of mysteries, like, for example, the mystery of time's elasticity. Mm-hmm. We like to think that, time's some invariable thing, click, 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 just like the ticking of a clock. 10 minutes here is the same as 10 minutes there. But science has actually largely disproved that. For example, we know that time is affected by both gravity and speed. And this is part of that whole theory of relativity. But at the end of the day, time passes just a little more slowly, say, on Jupiter, which has a bigger specific gravity than it does here on Earth. Now, it wouldn't be probably a big enough difference for us to personally notice. But also, we know that time slows down as we go faster. And so the theory is that as we approach the speed of light, that time slows down quite dramatically and almost to zero. Now, this has actually been tested. There are airplanes that can fly very, like Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. And there's these very fancy atomic clocks that measure all the way down to nanoseconds, And so they put these clocks on a plane going Mach 2 and another plane just traveling, more normal speed. And sure enough, the clocks run just a little slower on the faster plane. Wow. And so, again, these are the kinds of things that begin to blow our minds. And that's just one mystery. There's others we can talk about, but I think it's very difficult to understand at times exactly what it is. And we think it's, precise, but it isn't even always precise. It's affected by things.
When you're young, didn't Christmas seem like forever? Your birthday, whatever. I mean, it took forever. A portion of your life, the school year would never end. Now that you're a little bit older, you're thinking, oh my gosh, can you believe it's Christmas already? Oh, it's another year. Where did the time go? Mm-hmm. What's behind that, right? There's a lot of different theories. We'll take a few calls northwest to Arkansas. Lee is joining us, Monsignor. Hi, Lee. You're on the air.
Hi. Listen, I got a theory about this, which I want to share with everybody. My theory goes something like this. It's a matter of proportionality. For instance, when you're 5 years old, 1 year seems like forever because it's 50% of your known life. On the same token, when you're 100 years old, 1 year is 1% of your known life. Therefore, it's a much smaller proportion.
Yeah, it sounds as good a theory as any. I mean, it makes some sense, doesn't it? We have, shall we say, a lot more to remember when we're older.
Right. And it's all a matter if you think of it time altogether and your lifetime like a pie. When you're smaller, that same year is a much bigger slice of pie than it is when you're older.
Lee, thanks for the theory. I appreciate it. I wonder if it had a lot has to do with your cognitive abilities, too. When you're young, everything is new. Nick, you have a minute. Open your mic. Share with Monsignor what you just shared with me as well.
Exactly. Well, it's kind of similar to, I think, what Lee was saying. The psychologist that I played at the top of the hour was saying that adults live life cognitively from the top down, and little kids live from the bottom up, where everything is new and they're taking so much in. And so because they're so present to the moment, time goes a lot slower for them because they're absorbing everything. But when you're older, you're kind of on a little bit more on autopilot, living life from the top down. And so you're not as present to every single moment. Time seems to go faster.
Right. The Greeks had several words for time. One was chronos, that's just clock time. Another is aeon, which is eternity. We should talk about that later. But also, they have something called kairos, which is sort of the elasticity of time, that sometimes, like you say, our experience of time varies. And also that there seems to be times that certain things are fitting and other times not fitting. And so the Greeks kind of capture that mystery too.
Let's talk about that. Scripture tells us, as you know, with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. It comes from 2 Peter. Let's go through Chronos and let's go through clock time and subjective time and even eternity. That you can share the words for each of those and maybe unpack them, help us better understand it. Because, we were talking about the Immaculate Conception not that long ago and how God is outside of time and how Our Lady, could be born, without sin, yet she needed a Redeemer too. So the concept of time is really fascinating, even in a theological perspective.
Yeah, well, again, as I said, Chronos is clock time, and I think that's the time we most understand. Kairos, again, it's that sense of there are certain times that are fitting, and for certain things and so on. And Ecclesiastes talks about there's a time for everything under the sun, time to be born, time to die, and so on. So if a person dies at age 2, where we mourn that is unfitting. But if they die at 92, well, they had a good long life, So that kind of sense of time. But the most mysterious thing of all is aeon. We get the word eons in English, But eternity is not a long time. That's just Chronos, with an arrow at the end of it, But rather, aeon is the fullness of time. Now, here's a way to illustrate it. I mean, it's hard to paint pictures on the radio, but if everyone can imagine a clock face, I'm talking about a traditional clock now, not a digital. It's got numbers, 12 at the top, 6 at the bottom, 9 and 3, and all the other numbers in between. So out at the edge, those hands move and so on, so that 12 is 3 hours off from 3 and 6 and maybe 1, 2. Let's say that it's not, but let's just say we're noon now. That means that 9 in the morning is in the past and 3 in the afternoon is into the future, and so on. All right. But at the center dot, all those numbers are equally present. There's no difference. They all enter and they intersect at that center. And that's where God lives. There is no past or future with God. Everything is present now in one moment. And he sees all things at once. And so he's not waiting for you to make a decision, or he's not, the day of your birth is just as present to him as the day of your death. And everything in between. So it's a remarkable, that sort of omnipresence of God is what we call aeon. And it's just astonishing. And this is where a lot of times we run into trouble. Well, why does we ask all these questions to put God in time. Like, why does God allow so-and-so to be born if he knows he'll become Adolf Hitler? And we're sort of putting God back in time, but he's not there. Everything is present to God. And that, of course, raises questions, doesn't it? Like, well, does that mean I'm fated to do what I'm going to do tomorrow? Well, no, but God has just always known what you will freely do tomorrow. Just always been present to him. So that'll make your head explode.
It's fascinating. I love it.
Hey, this episode of the Drew Mariani Show is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free. It's updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. So don't delay. Download the app today. Thanks for listening.